Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the WHOLESTIC method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey everyone, it's Debbie Potts, the host of the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, and I am going to talk to you today about how the struggle is real, how you may be struggling to burn fat, improve your athletic performance, improve your overall health, longevity, even if you're doing all the right things, as that is my story I've been trying to share since I had my internal, external breakdown and burnout of all my body systems, I feel like, in 2013. And it's come a, gosh, 8 years. So it's been a while since I had my health issues, and I still am always trying to make sure I course correct along the way to keep myself healthy and improve the aging process. But really this year what I'm working on is what can I do to improve the whole me from the inside out? What can I do to live my best life, look my best, and feel my best the second half of my life, as somehow I am turning 50 this November 2021, and I am all about making sure I am looking, feeling, and performing my best by November. So part of that journey, last year we moved from Seattle, Bellevue, Washington, to North San Diego for that seeking of quality of life, year-round, good weather, that we can be outside as I work outside in my pergola, my glass house, and I just try to be in the outdoors all the time. And so that started my journey and really helped improve the quality of life and really thriving every day because I like good weather. And Seattle is beautiful and amazing, but I just needed a change, and I've closed my fitness studio, thankfully, after 10 years in Bellevue, Washington on October 1st, 2019, fortunately before COVID craziness started in 2020. So now I'm just really focused on coaching people to help them improve their health from the inside out and teach them how to get their bodies to burn fat and how to improve performance and longevity, because everyone is different. We all have different areas of opportunity, different internal imbalances that throw everything off. So our body's like an orchestra. Everything has to be working together to perform its best. So if one thing's off, we have this domino effect of issues. So the struggle is real. If you are doing all the right things, the air quotes around that, and you still can't figure out what is wrong, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to help people figure out what is going on with their body by running functional lab tests, correlating that information with your signs and symptoms, your genetics, and really working as a health investigator, putting all the pieces of your health puzzle back together again to really restore your health to the optimal you. But along that journey, as I'm coaching for Ben Greenfield now in his new Ben Greenfield coaching program that we offer people nutrition, exercise, and VIP programs, I really am finding lots of research. So I wanted to share some information with you today on some amino acid, glycine benefits I've been researching and learning about. Also the new book out, Mineral Fix. There's tons of info there I need to dive into. Learning different fasting methods from Dr. Mindy Pelez and how women need to change it a little bit. Learning more about that area to burn fat. There's so many areas that we need to look at on an individual basis if you are not burning fat. And Ryan Baxter and I are going to talk today about different things that we've both been learning and doing. But I think first thing to work on is your sleep. And if you can afford the Oura Ring, which, mine's charging right now. I forgot to put it back on. But I really find that Oura Ring info, or if you have Whoop Band, to give you great feedback on what are you doing to optimize your sleep, because so much goes on when we're sleeping in our body to restore, rebuild, repair, rebuild, and restore our health. And I think that's a great way to start. Also, of course, working on nutrition. And everyone gets confused, I think, looking at this one size fits all approach, that eating real food everyone agrees on, but what foods work best? And your body's going to be different for everyone. Which ratio of macronutrients works best? Most of us listening are training a lot. You're exercising a lot more than the other people in low carb keto world. So we have to maybe adjust because you are a unique individual. So we don't want to copy what someone else is doing exactly and think that's going to work the same. We have to maybe use that as a starting plate, a template, and then adjust up or down to fine tune everything for your body. So looking at your carbs, fat, protein, use that information you might get from Dr. Mindy or reading different blogs and listening to other podcasts, that what are the right ratios of carbs, fat, protein for you to burn fat, to balance your blood sugar. I find that it's to really use Keto Mojo, NutriSense, different things that you can do to measure your blood sugar and show some ketones most days of the week. I like doing like a 5-1-1 plan, intermittent fasting, 12 to 16 hours, 5 days a week, one day, not really focusing on fasting, intentionally. I don't really ever do it intentionally, but just intentionally fasting 5 days a week, and then non-intentionally fasting one day a week, and not really worrying about carbs, just eating healthy, real foods still every day, most that you can. And then have one day that you're doing a OMAD, a dinner to dinner, 24-hour fast. And we could talk about that sometime a little bit deeper. I'm having a lot of my clients need gut health repair, so I'm suggesting a bone broth fast for one day or so and work up to being able to do that. So you don't want to just start fasting 16 hours or 24 hours to get yourself to burn fat and have that gut reset, cell autophagy. We want to work up to that. First, you want to start getting rid of the sugar and the processed foods, the vegetable oils, the refined flours, the white devils, Dr. or Paul CHEK would say, and really just clean up what you're eating. So we want to work on what you're eating and then how, eating slowly, being in the parasympathetic state, get that 3 deep breaths in and out before you start. Take a pause button, focus and chew your food, eat slowly, take your time and not rush or multitask while you're eating. That's free. That's what you can do now. And then work towards, eating real food that makes you feel full and satisfied for hours. So there is no snacking. You're eating, say, 2 meals a day. Maybe you start with breaking your fast with liquid, a shake. I put some of what I've been doing for kind of a longevity superfoods gut repair shake mix. I've been throwing everything in the blender. I put that on my blog on debbiepotts.net. And I think, working on what you're eating, starting to shift to be fat adapted, to stick with that. Intermittent fasting will help you, but it's hard to just start from a carb eater, sugar burner, and go to a 24-hour fast without working towards that, because you'll be hangry because your body's used to getting those carbs and burning carbs. You have to keep refueling all the time. So there's lots to work on an individual basis. So experimenting, finding what works best for you is really important. But Ryan and I will talk a little bit about that, how stress impacts everything. As I started to say, beginning the show before I started rambling, is that 2013, my story, if you haven't heard it, I say this all the time, but I was being low carb athlete. I was doing fasted workouts. I was doing, minimal fuel on my long bikes, and I was doing Ironmans and marathons and 50K trail running, and I gained 30 pounds. My hormones totally got blown up. I got all sorts of pathogens, yeast, fungal, whatever, I'm sure, mold, toxicity, candida, blastohominus, all sorts of different things, because stress is on, your immune system's off. So you let your guard down. And so you're susceptible to all these different pathogens that our body usually defends ourselves. But when we are weak, when we are not able to defend that castle, that empire that is our microbiome or inside of our digestive system, we are susceptible to injury. So we get this whole domino effect of imbalances, chronic stressors that are going to just throw off our body systems, your stomach acidity, your pancreatic enzymes, your liver gallbladder function, your liver detoxification system, your microbiome gets imbalanced. We get dysbiosis, and then our immune system is even lower. So then you might welcome in all these different pathogens and their friends, these opportunistic secondary infections. So we get just this whole mess going on inside of us, which is going to cause, say, holes in your gut, that leaky gut, permeable gut wall lining, intestinal wall gets susceptible to leakage of these bad guys get out, and then we have all sorts of inflammation in our body and all sorts of different signs and symptoms that we can look at what they're related to. So anyways, the point is there's a lot to work on being healthy, and for athletes, you're putting your body at stress. I know a lot of people are endurance athletes, or they're just exercising too much, kind of hit training, CrossFit, too much intensity. I've said for years the Goldilocks effect. Too much of anything will cause imbalances. Too little of anything will cause deficiency. So what's in between, I've always called the Goldilocks effect, that right balance of both ends to give you that positive response, or hormesis, that positive outcome. And a lot of that I'm finding we can measure and track our progress or regression with heart rate variability. So I put together a blog because I've been realizing this with my clients using their Whoop or Oura Ring and their gut healing repair protocol or whatever we're working on, if it's mold or Lyme disease or heavy metal toxicity, is measuring your heart rate variability score, paying attention to those numbers each day, especially the Oura Ring. You know, in the Whoop, you'll get it in the morning from overnight, but it's really fascinating to see the connection of your gut health to your heart rate variability score, because your HRV is going to be an indication of your vagal tone. So that vagal nerve that's connecting your brain to your gut is a good indicator of your stress. And that hidden internal stressors are going to cause that metabolic chaos, we say as FDN practitioners. That is a good way to measure. Now, it's also a good way to measure, are we doing the right protocol to heal and rebuild you from the inside out by seeing any changes with the HRV? Are you getting your sleep score, your readiness, and your sleep score, are they improving? I've been trying to get my sleep score to be in the 90s each day and my HRV score to go up. So some things I wrote about in this blog and did some research is the indication of my gut health, and the connection with the HRV is really interesting because I myself personally started adding in the Kion Colostrum on an empty stomach, put 1 scoop in my mouth and let it dissolve, doing that morning and evening. And I also have been doing other things as glycine, 2 scoops of that, and some glutamine. And I've been really trying to work on these different drinks I can do before bed that will improve my sleep, and also post-workout window, adding some glutamine and some amino acids in there, the glycine and the Kion Aminos. So kind of fun stuff to see, oh my gosh, my HRV score is just totally improving. What's going on? So I looked up some research on colostrum. It's shown to positively influence gut status in both human and animal studies. And they have just how it can restore the composition of the intestinal microbiome and support healing of damaged mucosa. And I'll put these links in the show notes. And other articles said, and both animal and human studies show that bovine colostrum may stimulate the growth of intestinal cells, strengthen the gut wall, and prevent intestinal permeability, which is leaky gut. that causes particles from your gut to leak to the rest of your body. That's in a great article as well. So what is colostrum? How does it work? It's kind of weird sounding, but it does work, I swear. I've firsthand am testing out. Me, it works. Colostrum is known as the first milk produced by the mammary glands of females just prior to giving birth. And for the first few days after giving birth, they'll produce more and serves as a concentrated source of proteins, growth factors, and antibodies that are essential for the early development of newborns. So, what's interesting, if you listen to Joel Green, he has a great part 1 and 2 podcasts with Ben Greenfield on his show, as well as Joel did some another 1 or 2 individual podcasts for Ben, and he has a great book on the immunity code. And I like how he looks at things. There's an order to everything. There's a sequence and order of operations, he says. And think about if you want to improve your immune system, well, how is your immune system even developed? It's developed from birth. And why is our immune system 80% in our guts? So we look at how is it started from birth? What happened to create that immune system? So why don't we go back to how it was developed and improve that? So colostrum is helpful. So here's some information on colostrum. I'll put, Ben had a great long article, as he always does, on the research on it, but cytokines, part of your systemic immune system, these hormones keep communication between immune cells active. There's growth factors that assist with maintenance and growth of certain body tissues, including muscle and GI lining. Lactoferrin, this is all in the colostrum. Lactoferrin assists with iron absorption and is a crucial part of the immune defense system. Colostrum also helps with growth hormone, and growth hormone works individually as well as together with other growth factors in colostrum to aid in the growth and function of the GI tissues, muscles, and more. There's immunoglobulins that are small proteins used by your immune system to seek out and destroy foreign antigens, those invaders. So you hear about IgA, IgD, IgE, IgG, and IgM. Those are immunoglobulins, antibodies. So think again, they're small proteins used by your immune system to seek out and destroy foreign antigens. So if you ever, we talk about or listen to podcasts on food sensitivity tests, and we're looking at the antibodies. All right, also the proline-rich polypeptides, PRPs, are important in the immune system as regulators for the immune system. They encourage the growth of white blood cells and may restore the balance of cellular immune functions and defend against oxidative stress and support brain health. So colostrum is very beneficial to help everything from your immune system to your muscles, and that's why they've been used for thousands of years in many cultures, even as Chinese medicine, ancient Chinese medicine, it's regarded as a potent health tonic. So I'll put the link for that article in the show notes that Ben wrote on research on colostrum. But, try it out. I'm not selling Kion, but I obviously trust Ben because he's very into research. And if his name's behind something, I know he's done the work. So I use the Kion powder, colostrum. But again, it's an N equals 1 experiment, but I've just been correlating this improvement in my HRV score to possibly my improvement in my gut health repair. And also I've seen other clients that have been doing protocols for their health, and I've seen their score because my VIP clients, I'm looking at their scores every day. So here's another article connecting HRV and gut repair. So IBD was strongly associated with an overall decrease in HRV, indicating decreased autonomic nervous system activity. So the parasympathetic nerve displayed a stronger inverse association with the autonomic nervous system activity than the sympathetic nerve, indicating autonomic nervous system dysfunction with patients with IBD. So that means the vagal nerve is connecting measurement of the parasympathetic nervous system. So the vagus nerve is a modulator of the intestinal immune homeostasis. The GI tract is constantly confronted by food antigens, possible pathogens, symbiotic intestinal microbiota that present a risk factor for intestinal inflammation and is highly innervated by the vagal fibers that connect the central nervous system with the intestinal immune system, making vagus a major component, the neuroendocrine immune axis. This axis is involved in the coordinated neural, behavioral, and endocrine responses important for the first line defense against inflammation. So there's a great article on the vagus nerve. And again, I'm telling you this because that's connected to heart rate variability. So it's very interesting. The vagus nerve is an essential part of the brain gut axis and plays an important role in inflammation maintenance, as I said, and of inflammation. But the maintenance of intestinal homeostasis is really important in regulation of food intake, satiety, and energy homeostasis. And they're showing that an interaction between nutrition and the vagus nerve is well known, and vagal tone can influence food intake and weight gain. And this article continues to say that, moreover, the vagus nerves plays an important role in the pathogenesis of different disorders, obesity, as well as stress-induced and inflammatory diseases. Vagus nerve stimulation and several meditation techniques demonstrate that modulating the vagus nerve has a therapeutic effect, mainly due to its relaxing and anti-inflammatory properties. So I'll put all this, the link to this blog I put together in here with the links to these research studies, but just start tracking your heart rate variability. You can do it with a Bluetooth chest strap and put on an app like HRV Elite or Rhonda Collier. We've done tons of podcasts in the past with her on heart rate variability measurement with Sweetbeat Life. And I know there's other ones out there. I find the Oura Ring is about $300, and it's a great investment to just keep on your finger. You don't have to deal with the strap in the morning and laying there for 5 minutes after you get up to measure it. So it's much more convenient to me. The Whoop Band I don't really like myself because I don't like having something on my wrist when I'm sleeping. Oura Ring is much easier. I don't even know it's there. So just track what you're doing. We can talk next week about sleep, but I think, working on gut health is really important for your recovery. And for athletes, kind of connect that together with athletes, how important it is to take care of your gut, because there's research when you're exercising a longer duration that you are putting your body into a position that you are creating leaky gut, more opportunity to damage your gut wall lining, especially in the heat. So it's an important part of your performance recovery should be, for an athlete, having a bone broth post-workout when you're starting to get hungry, having a bone broth protein. I use Ancient Nutrition's bone broth protein, but it's important to take care of your gut health. Even if you are exercising, you think you're invincible. So just make sure you realize that your endurance exercise, you're putting your body at risk for gut issues. And so it's an important part to take care of your gut, having, a little bit more glutamine perhaps, the glycine, there's great info on that. And colostrum is on an empty stomach morning and nighttime, we suggest to clients. So take care of the whole you from the inside out, starting with, the holistic method is sleep and nutrition and exercise. I know you guys got that taken care of, but I would actually not, because most people don't do enough lifting heavy weights and do way too much cardio, which doesn't help you. Too much is more movement throughout the day. I'd rather you focus on eating real food, but getting to bed so you're not burning the candle at both ends. So much to talk about. I have lots of articles I'm trying to work on. They're all saved in this Evernote I've been using and just put all these links somehow in here. But just getting movement throughout the day and work on taking care of your gut health by having more bone broth, doing a bone broth fast once a week, doing the colostrum morning and night, adding that glycine powder I get and I put into my water and shake that with some Kion Aminos to get extra. And we'll dive more into that next time. But let me know your questions as I am diving deep into gut health and working on microbiome and getting people to do lab testing to know what's going on, because what you don't know, you don't know. And so you can't really improve your ability to burn fat, improve performance and longevity if you don't know what's actually going on under the hood. So you've been getting a GI test, a stool test, and find out, okay, what is my microbiome? What's my Firmicutes ratio to Bacteroides? Because if you look at different info out there, Firmicutes increases from antibiotics, environmental toxins, stress, and refined carbohydrates, and low Bacteroides or low ratio, it will impact your ability to burn fat. So there's Firmicutes, the bad bacteria stores more calories to fat versus having more Bacteroides. So we want everything in the right balance, and looking at your gut bacteria is a really big part of figuring out why you're not burning fat, and how we should be paying more attention to the microbiome balance and feeding our gut bacteria properly to help get that short chain fatty acid production of butyrate and get those right fat burning guys in our gut to be healthy and happy. So I will stop talking because there's so much to talk about today, but I will try to do little mini intros going over what I'm finding in my little world. And today I bring back the intro I started with about Ryan Baxter. He's a primal health coach living in New Hampshire. He's an avid enthusiast of ancestral living and believes that following practices of our ancestors can live a healthy, thriving life. He has a passion for endurance racing. Obstacle course racing is his gig. He loves to help other athletes apply ancestral living practices in order to achieve their own athletic goals. He has a great website. Somehow he has ability to fit in writing these deep blog posts on his website, Ryan Baxter Health Coaching, but his website's rjbhealth.com.coach actually. And you can read more, like I'll put in the links, show notes on enhancing metabolic flexibility by using your breath, and some interesting articles he's written up. So let's bring on our podcast today with Ryan Baxter. Enjoy the show, and just drop me a note if you have any questions, comments, suggestions for future episodes as I work on the schedule for the fall. Enjoy.
Hey there, it's Debbie Potts, the host of the Low Carb Athlete podcast, and I am going to talk some shop today with a fellow listener and health coach, Ryan Baxter. We're going to talk about metabolic efficiency, metabolic inefficiency, flexibility and inflexibility, and we're going to just dive into all things that we talk about in the show that we want to go into a little bit deeper. So I know a lot of us want to burn fat, improve performance, and hopefully longevity is a concern. So we're going to talk about Ryan's story and how he got to be a health coach from being a software engineer and obstacle course racer. He lives in New Hampshire with his wife and a 7-year-old daughter, 3-year-old son, while he operates RJB health coaching program. Ryan's interest in obstacle course racing began in 2015 when he ran the Spartan Stadium race at Fenway Park in Boston. That'd be fun. After crossing the finish line, he was hooked, and not being an athlete growing up, he began to search for resources, how to optimize his performance in multifaceted sports. So he discovered people as Ben Greenfield, Mark Sisson, Rob Wolf, and others in ancestral health and the wellness space. Over the next few years, Ryan's combined what he learned about ancestral health and training to optimize his own performance as an athlete in obstacle course racing. He wanted to share what he's learned. He became a primal health coach and then certified Spartan SGX coach. Through his own health coaching business, he strives to help athletes achieve their own goals, both on and off race course, with ancestral model for health and exercise. So we always message back and forth on Instagram on different posts. So it'll be fun to talk to Ryan about his areas of expertise and how we can improve our ability to get faster as we get older as athletes and improve the aging process. All right, guys, I have Ryan Baxter, one of our fellow listeners and health coaches and athletes, to share story and insight and just kind of talk shop about how we can become better fat burners, improve performance and longevity. As I say every time, that I'm more concerned about the aging process, longevity, and living my best life, second half of life, because I kind of damaged myself the first half. So Ryan, thanks for coming on and joining me today to talk.
No problem. Thanks for having me, Debbie.
Yeah, and where are you located?
In New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. That's
Yes.
great. So what you're an engineer and you are doing health coaching. Kind of what led you down the path? I shared the intro, your bio, but what I think it is so important, we're just talking that we need to share our stories. And we always learn this in health coaching programs, how to start your business is sharing your why. And that story can impact somebody else. You know, people will be out there relating to, which is why I was saying why I still keep up with the podcast, because I just feel like there's a need to share with other athletes that we are not invincible and we can't try to do everything, and we need to be fit and healthy from the inside out. So let's talk about your story and why Ryan is an engineer and a health coach.
Sure. So I guess my story kind of starts back in 2015. I was kind of wrapping up college, and I had been exercising throughout college, going to the gym, but with no real purpose other than thinking that's what you're supposed to do to be healthy. And once I finished college, I was then dating my now wife. And she was kind of into road racing and running 5Ks and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, but I hate running. And I didn't want to do that. So I was trying to put some meaning behind the exercise I was doing. And I came across obstacle course racing. And I was like, well, there's still running involved, but at least there's like something else in between, right? You're not just running on the road, you're running on a trail. There's things to do, obstacles you have to overcome in between, every so often. So I'm gonna give that a shot, right? I convinced my wife to do it with me. And the first race I ran was at the end of 2015 in Fenway Park. They had an obstacle course race inside the ballpark there, which was awesome for me because I'm a huge Boston Red Sox fan. And we finished the race and I absolutely loved it. And my wife absolutely hated it. So, but I immediately wanted to sign up for more races next year. But I had no athletic background. I had no background in endurance. I was not an athlete growing up. Like you said, I was an engineer, and I was your typical engineer, software engineer that's, not very athletic person. And so I kind of started searching around for how to train for these things, and eventually came across Ben Greenfield's podcast, because he was into obstacle course racing at the time. And when, of course, I listened to his podcast, he had someone by the name of Mark Sisson on the podcast, and he had just come out with a book called Primal Endurance. And I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to train for these 14-mile obstacle course races, this seems like the best bet, right? I have no other options, so let me go down this path. And I have no knowledge of ancestral health, paleo, primal, anything at this time, right? Kind of eating your standard American diet. So I completely flipped what I was doing on its head, right? I started changing the way I was eating. I started, learning about endurance training and aerobic training, and using things like the MAF formula and all this other stuff. And I kind of went headfirst into this whole ancestral health realm, and it kind of led me down this path of low carb and primal and paleo and etc. at the same time, I was really starting to ramp up my training for these optical courses. The next year I was getting more and more miles and doing, longer and longer runs. And I was at the same time lowering my carbohydrates lower and lower. And this is kind of really before keto kind of blew up.
Yeah.
And at some point I was eating a ketogenic diet without knowing it, right? And I never tested my ketones, and now I nerd out on blood sugar and ketones and all this, the metrics that we can test today. But then I had no idea about any of that stuff. And long story short, the next year, 2016, I ended up running a bunch of obstacle course races, and I finished all of them. But at the end of the year, I really felt like garbage. Like I was tired all the time. I was moody. My daughter at the time was like 2 years old. And, I would come back from a long run on the weekends and I'd just be useless laying on the couch. I was moody. I was hungry sometimes, but not all the time. My performance was starting to decline and I needed to do something about it. And that kind of started my journey back from kind of burnout. I had, candida and C. diff. I had an unmeasurable amount of insulin in my body. When they went to go test my insulin, I had a long journey back. I started working with people from Nourish, Balance, Thrive and Chris Kelly and Dr. Tommy Wood, and healed myself over the course of 2 years. And through that process, I got really interested in helping others do the same thing. And so got certified as a primal health coach, and started doing some health coaching after that too. So that's kind of the short version.
And the primal health coaching, that's through Mark Sisson, his certification, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. And Brad Kearns is awesome. So I think, it's a good story because it is similar to mine, how we kind of are usually the type A, ambitious, high performing individuals that we are exercising and we pick races. Okay, we strive to do our best in them. And then we learn about this nutrition world and, how to do lower carbs to burn more fat. But we don't realize, as we were saying earlier, that it's going to be a little different for people. Those guidelines that you hear in mainstream, that they're not related to the athlete. So if we're training 15, 20 hours a week and burning 10 more calories and we're more active throughout the day, the guidelines are going to be a little bit different. And N equals 1. You found out you went too low or had too much stress. So that external bucket of stressors were accumulating. And then we have this internal sources of stressors building up. So we get this huge metabolic chaos, we say in FDN. So you just had kind of similar to me, that you had all this stuff that you wouldn't even know was going on unless you ran all the lab tests.
Right. Yeah. And so I had a whole bunch of other stressors in my life too. Like I said, I had a very young daughter at the time. So that's a stressor. My work involved a lot of travel at the time. I was traveling and speaking at conferences. So I was literally traveling around the world every few weeks. And again, I was training a lot and eating far too few calories, and it was all just a lot of stress. My sleep was completely dysregulated. And my cortisol pattern was all off the charts, weird. And so it was, not only, did I completely switch kind of my diet, my beliefs around diet, etc. and that, but it was a lot of lifestyle stuff, around just like de-stressing my life and getting things back in balance and stuff like that. And you're also right that I think that we lose a lot of context when we just hear people talk on podcasts or read things online, right? Because what you're doing as an athlete is not the same as someone who doesn't, get off the couch and is metabolically unhealthy, right? So we need to take into account, like, 50 grams, for example, if 50 grams of carbs is often considered the limit to be in ketosis, but as an athlete, it could be far higher than that. Personally, I've consumed up to 200 grams of carbohydrates and produced ketones. And I know there are case studies of ultra endurance athletes consuming up to 600 grams of carbohydrates during a race and still producing ketones, right? So like your threshold for carbohydrate intake as an athlete is completely different from someone who is not moving at all. So we need to take context into consideration, and that's a lot of stuff I do now with the people I work with. But that it just gets left out, in some degree. You can't blame anyone, but when you hear people talk on podcasts, or you read books or read articles and stuff like that. So we're kind of a special case, us athletes. So we need to pay attention to context. I think is very important.
So when you saw Christopher Kelly at Nourish, Balance, Thrive, because I went through them too, and I went through like 8 different people. So they're none of them are to blame to not fix me, because it was what I learned for myself was I had to make changes in my own life. So I could do all the lab testing, all the supplementation, but it wasn't really going to work long term unless I did my lifestyle changes. So what did you find? You get all the lab results back, you get the supplement protocol, but how did you start to finally heal and rebuild your own self?
Yeah. One of the hardest things for me was I completely stopped exercising other than walking and yoga for like 2 months.
Yeah.
I didn't do anything. And so I stopped going to the gym. I stopped running. I stopped doing everything. And that gave me some time to really just like chill out and let my body calm down and relax. And also gave me some time to like focus on things like sleep, which I was having a huge problem with, just being up multiple times during the night, etc. And we know how sleep then plays into everything else. And I think the other lifestyle thing that I did that was huge for me was the food part, right? I started to basically incorporate carbohydrates into my diet. What I thought was a lot of carbohydrates back then was nothing to what I'm doing now. But, I was, started to eat some sweet potatoes and some fruit, things that there's no reason any athlete should really be avoiding if you're a lean, fit person. God forbid if we have a banana, we're going to develop diabetes. It's just not the case, right? And so I started, and a lot of that was just like mindset work. Like I've been programmed mentally to think these things are evil and like they're going to make me unhealthy. And in fact, they were the things that were probably helping a lot of the blood markers and cortisol and all this other stuff, right? So I think like those are some of the major things that I started to change immediately. And yeah, there were some supplements involved. I did, take a supplement for some things, especially to battle some of the gut stuff, the candida and the C. diff and stuff like that. But it was most of the stuff that I did was lifestyle related.
And I think that's a big thing. I always have to tell people that, and because I did it myself for years, I owned my own fitness studio until, October 2019, that I was still moving and teaching, and I don't work out with my clients. I, show them examples, but I was still burning the candle at both ends, even though I stopped racing. But I couldn't just, like everyone would tell me, just limit your exercise to 45 minutes, just do walking and yoga. I'm like, what? No. So I think I tried that in the beginning when I felt just horrible and I didn't have a choice. I had no energy but have a nap every day when it first started to me in 2013. But then, I'd start to push it a little bit. 2015, like, I'm going to do a Hanu half Ironman, which happens to be tomorrow. And I would just try to race and then I'd have something happen. And so it was like, I was at 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 1 step forward, 3 steps. And I think that's the big thing for people. What I'm trying to learn from my mistakes is you have to, like you just said, you have to change your way of life. And I think a lot of people, athletes, we still try to like work out 2-3 hours a day and do this protocol that we give people. And I think it doesn't work. I've had so many clients like, well, I'm not, seeing anything. Like, are you prioritizing sleep? Are you doing all those other lifestyle habits? But You make a great point. Let's go back to the carbs. I think we get afraid of any carbohydrates, and you hear in the keto world, and then we got the carnivore world that, only thing you need is animal protein, and how that it's individualized. But what have you learned working with athletes? Now you're health coaching, and you seem to research a lot and blog a lot. What have you found, like how to teach people to be okay with having some carbs? Maybe we have to test every day or use a NutriSense to prove like it's okay for you. You're not spiking your blood sugar.
Yeah. So this is an evolution for me. And I think, I always like to experiment on myself first before I, communicate with other people, and tell them to do the things that I'm saying.
That's
so
a good coach.
Personally, I've done plenty of experiments on myself on trying to find the amount of carbs that is right for me. Like I said, I was eating somewhere less than 50 grams for a long period of time. And now I consuming somewhere between the range of 200 to 300 grams of carbs a day. And I've worn a CGM for many months while doing this, and I have zero issues.
Do you do NutriSense, or what do you use?
I use Levels.
Levels,
yep, Levels Health. They're great. And yeah, I literally, I don't advise people do this, but I literally sat on the couch at 8:30 at night one night and ate 2 Pop-Tarts, and my blood sugar didn't go over 100 grams. 100 milligrams.
Sugar, though. That's
right. Yes. Me personally.
Experiment.
Me personally, right? And I'm not saying that anyone needs to do that or that everyone should do it, or I definitely don't do that on the regular. I was like, I need to see what my threshold is, and I'm trying to find the most processed, crazy food that I possibly can eat, right? And in the worst scenario, and I still couldn't really make my my blood sugar spike. So I have a very high carb tolerance. And one thing that I suggest all my athletes do, especially the ones that are kind of from this low carb keto mindset, is they do Rob Wolf's 7-day carb test, which I think is kind of a very nice introduction to finding the carbs that work for you. At least the carb sources that work for you. So pick things that are, you enjoy, whole food carb sources, and as well as, pick things like white bread and see what you do, right? So, pick your sweet potatoes, your fruits, your white rice, whatever. And then, like I said, eat a couple slices of white bread and see what happens, right? And that's eye-opening to a lot of people, because they're like, oh, first of all, it's eye-opening because they're like, I have to eat a lot of food volume to get to 50 grams of carbohydrates from whole foods. Like, it's like 50 grams of carbohydrates from like apples is like, that's a lot, right? It's not something I would do on the regular. Like, I wouldn't even sit down and do this, right? So they're like, holy crap, like actually this is a lot of food. And secondly, they're like, oh, well, actually I do so well with apples and strawberries, but I don't do so well with bananas and white rice, right? Or sweet potatoes are great for me, but white potatoes aren't so good for me. So at least they have things that they're like, okay, I can see here that, I have some carbohydrates that I know aren't going to destroy me, right? They don't really spike my blood sugar up above 140 milligrams per deciliter. Which is kind of that threshold for, a healthy range after consuming a bolus of carbohydrates. And then we can start to incorporate those into their diet, right? And it's often like a little bit at a time. Like, it's like, okay, start out with, just 25 grams, after your workout or whatever, see how you feel before your workout, whatever, around your workout, because they feel safe, because they're burning energy, right? It's a mindset thing. And see how you feel. And oftentimes I think a lot of, I see a lot of athletes come to me in this space. They're like, I'm hungry, but I don't know what else to eat. Like, I'm just eating a lot of fat, and I've hit my protein goal for the day, but I'm afraid of carbohydrates, and I don't know what to eat, So it's kind of like, okay, well, if you're hungry, well, let's, and you don't really need any more protein, and you're get your fat goal, you hit your fat goal for the day. Well, let's have a little bit of carbohydrates in here somewhere, right? So, you know, it's really just kind of the step-by-step slow approach to kind of just get them over that mental hump of carbohydrates are evil, you know, etc. And I'm going to develop diabetes from having some strawberries, right? So yeah,
I think it's a good, I always like the good reminder of eat real food and find the right balance of carbs, fat, protein that balance your blood sugar, that don't have the roller coaster highs and lows. And that's why I think it's such a good investment to do a continuous glucose monitor for, I think it comes for 14 days, but I think you need 2 cycles, especially for women. I want them to see their whole menstrual cycle, what happens, because if you listen to a podcast with Dr. Mindy and talk about how women are different than men when they're doing their low carbs and carbs timing and exercise timing based on their cycle, but men can eat so much more than women carbs and then fast more than women. So it's just different for each person, but also genders and female athletes and male athletes versus the non-athlete. But real food is the main thing.
Yeah. And I think this is the other thing is like, if I asked you to eat 150 to 200 grams of carbohydrates from whole food, fruits, vegetables, etc., I guarantee you won't be able to do it, right? It takes some serious effort and planning and stomach volume, etc., to get there, right? And that's not even like that's just scratching the surface when you're exercising as much as an endurance athlete is. Like you can handle so much more for that. I guarantee you, almost everyone, right? There are going to be exceptions, but you know, almost everyone can get, you know, as an endurance athlete, you can get to that level and probably be fine. And yeah, and I agree that, you know, if you're going to do something like a CGM, I find the 14 days is probably not enough, right? Because you're going to do a week of like, just like baseline, like, okay, this is where my normal meals are. And then you just kind of start testing things. And over the course of a month, like you can see, you get into a lot of different scenarios, like, oh, my sleep was bad this night. And, you know, my blood sugar was not so good that the next day. And so it just introduces a whole new, you know, a month is a good time for him to get into all kinds of different scenarios to see how things affect you from a blood sugar point of view. But yeah, I think it's important.
I think it's another good information data we can collect about a person's biochemical individuality is what Paul CHEK tells us to use in his coaching programs, and what we use in FDN and nutritional therapy is the metabolic typing diet. And Bill Wolcott book he wrote years ago is a really interesting book for people to look at. But the mtdiet.com, you can take a quiz and get all this information if you're fast or slow oxidizer, parasympathetic dominant or sympathetic dominant, or you mix. And then it can tell you just so much information. It's overwhelming, but really get more individual information about yourself, as well as I like to look at people's genetics. And if you do something like DNA Fit, and you can just really individualize what to eat rather than, okay, everyone do 50 grams or lower carbs, but some people, as you said, you can tolerate more. I get like a headache if I have too many fruits. I get like a sugar headache in 5 seconds. So I have to really pair my food up with the protein and fat. And if I have too many carbs, I don't get full. I'll just keep eating for 3 hours. So my body does best, because of my history, I think, is eating with more protein and fat. But that's for me. Other people, I know I have a client that he can eat a ton of carbs and he's training for Ironmans, and he can have like a banana and a sugar drink and be totally lean and, you know, be great. But that's why I think you have to really fine tune it per individual's needs based on all these clues that we can collect.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, yeah, I think that you definitely have to experiment, right? It's not just about what your blood sugar does, it's about how you feel, right? How you perform during your race. You know, how's your sleep, how's your digestion, you know, all these things take into account, you know, how you develop your diet, whether it's carbohydrates, whether it's protein, whether it's types of fats you eat, etc. Right? That changes regardless of the person, right? Some people do better with lean proteins. Some people do better with fattier proteins. Some people are okay with saturated fat. Other people are not okay with saturated fat. Some people can tolerate, you know, fruits, certain types of fruits. Some people can tolerate, beans and legumes. Other people can't, right? And
Yeah.
I always encourage my clients to like just be mindful of how you feel, like everything, your performance, your sleep, your digestion, your brain, your mental capacity, etc., how you feel at work, what your mood is like that all is a signal of how you're handling any type of food that you're eating.
And I say that a lot because that's the metabolic typing chart. I'll use that with people even if they don't do the quiz, because it just goes, here's how you should feel after you eat, here's how you should not feel. And just reading that helps people go, okay, yeah, that's not right. And I think that just giving them those little clues to think about, or cues, what they just ate, was that the right food mix for myself? If they don't, especially if they don't have the money to drop, $1,000, $2,000 in functional labs, because that's a lot of money you have to invest in really knowing what's going on. So, I mean, at least we can start kind of go pay attention to how you feel. But I think it's hard for people. Haven't you found that people are so sympathetic dominant? We're so activated going all the time that we don't know how to feel and check in with our own selves anymore. Hard.
I think so. Yeah, I think people lose connection with what they, they lose connection with their body, what their body's telling them. They go by what the app says or whatever they think is right based on the podcast they just listened to, or the book they just read, or the blog they just read, right? And one of the things I use with clients that struggle with this is, okay, every day I want you to tell me what your sleep was like, what your stress level was like, what your what your digestion was like, what your mood was like. Rank it from a 1 to 10 scale, just very basic. Get up in the morning and tell me about the day before, 1 to 10 scale for all these things. And that helps them to like check in with themselves, because oftentimes they just ignore it, or they don't even think about it, or they're just not used to like paying attention to like, oh, my stool this morning was not the right, wasn't right. Something was off yesterday, right? So like, that's one way I help them to develop that habit of checking in with themselves and paying attention to what their body's telling them, is just having them, and they're like type A people, right? So they're going to do what you say, right? And they love having to visualize it, right? So if they see these numbers in front of them, oh, sleep was terrible, digestion was poor, etc. What did I eat yesterday? Maybe it was that, whatever that banana I ate, or the ribeye, the high fat ribeye that I ate, and maybe I should pay attention to like leaner cuts of meat or something like that, right? Yeah. So I think having them, check in with themselves every day to develop that habit and reconnect with their body is an important thing to develop for someone who's lost that connection.
Yeah, and I think it's overwhelming for people, because I know I'm coaching for Ben Greenfield now, and VIP clients that I have them track their sleep, their food, and you got to follow the exercise program. Then we evaluate what works and what doesn't work. So there's a lot of data to be a health coach that it's, I think, overwhelming for a client, but for us to individualize and figure out what's working, what's not working, how to optimize your health, we have to collect all this information. So it is a lot. Use Oura Ring or
I do.
Whoop.
Yep, I have an Oura Ring. Yep.
Yeah, and I think using a continuous glucose monitor for a while, using a Whoop or Oura Ring is really helpful. But also heart rate for people exercising. Do you measure heart rate variability? Do you train with heart rate monitor? How do you train them to be metabolically efficient?
Yeah, so for athletes, for sure, I try to get them to definitely monitor heart rate during the workouts that I want them to be focused on, like their aerobic work. There's other ways around it if they don't want to use their heart rate monitor. I have some athletes that just can't be bothered with technology sometimes. For example, breathing through your nose is a pretty good sure way to make sure you're not going over your aerobic threshold. But yeah, for sure, if I can get them to do daily HRV measurements, either with something like an Oura Ring, or I also like to use iThlete, ITHLETE, and just with a heart rate monitor in the morning. I like iThlete because not only does it take the HRV and your resting heart rate, but also it asks you a bunch of subjective questions, like I was saying before, about how was your sleep? How intense was your workout the night before? How was your mood? That type of stuff. How was your diet? So I can not only see, okay, here's a heart rate number, an HRV number, but this is what their training was like. This is their mood. This is their sleep, etc. I think that's important. Is it necessary 100% of the time? No, but I think it's useful data to have. I had an athlete just last week or the week before. He had wrapped up a pretty intense endurance event a week before that, and he was doing okay. HRV looked great after the event, everything normal, and then all of a sudden I start seeing his HRV just going to crapper, for lack of better words. And it was super high. I'm sorry, it was super low. His resting heart rate was super high, way out of whack. And then all of a sudden I get a message from him. He's like, "Hey, I feel really tired. I'm kind of cranky. I have no mood. I have no energy to work out. My mental focus is really bad." And I was like, okay, well, this correlates exactly with what I'm seeing with your HRV and your heart rate. And I was like, all right, a week off, no exercise. You're just going to walk. That's all you're going to do. And we took the week off. And again, one of these type A people, midweek, he's like, "Hey, this is really frustrating me. I want to work out. I don't understand why my HRV isn't getting better. I don't understand why my heart rate's not better. There's something wrong. There has to be something wrong with the app, right? It's still low. I haven't worked out in 3 days." And I'm like, just give it a week, 7 days, just 7 days. Sure enough, 7 days later, everything turns around. He feels better. HRV, heart rate's nice, normal. And so it's a useful tool. It can be a useful tool. But I think one of the things I like to caution people with is that they get stuck on the day-to-day measurements, right? Oh, why is it low this day? And they get super angry about it. I'm like, don't worry about day-to-day. Just it's like your body weight. Like your body weight goes up and down. You can't look at the day-to-day measurements. You have to look at the trend, right? Once you start to see a trend in a certain direction, whether good or bad, that's when you start to, be concerned about it. If it goes up one day and it's back to normal the next day, or it goes down one day and it's back to normal the next day, that's not a big deal, right? That's just, whatever, a fluke or some weird stressful event or whatever. But when you have to look for the trends over time, I think is the important thing, as well as correlate to subjective measures like your sleep, your mood, and all that other stuff too. So that's when it becomes useful.
What are some of your favorite tricks, biohacks to improve HRV vagal tone?
I'm a huge fan of, I think one of the things that you can use to improve your HRV is to do aerobic work. So I think I tend to see people who have a very strong aerobic base built up. They tend to have pretty consistent high HRV scores, and they see less fluctuations from day to day. They also have a fairly low resting heart rate as well. So if I see things like, low HRV scores with high resting heart rates, then I'm almost certainly going to have them do a period of time where they're doing pure aerobic base building type of work. So either long, slow runs or, low intensity work I'm a huge fan of the rower, the Concept 2 rower. I think it's a great tool. Doing easy rows on the rower. I think that if you can do a lot of that easy stuff in the morning, maybe fasted, that can help kind of, promote better aerobic fitness too. Mm-hmm. But doesn't necessarily have to be fasted if that doesn't work for you. But yeah, I think that's one of the ways. It's not sexy. It's not cool. It's not a supplement or anything like that. But I think just becoming more aerobically fit, I tend to see people have better HRV scores and lower resting heart rates. So.
Mm-hmm. I really like, since COVID started, we started doing a little more yoga in the beginning, a lot more. Now it's like twice a week, 3 times a week with these Travis Elliott YouTube videos. we bought his programs. We do yin yoga and just, ending our practice with 3 ohms, because that's a great way to stimulate your vagal nerve, is just that, and if you just sit in your car when you're stressed out, I think just that humming, singing, but the ohms are the same thing. It's that vibration that really helps strengthen that vagal nerve and get the vagal tone, help your HRV. But I just found that was a big thing the past years, finishing with 3 ohms or just making sure I'm humming more, singing in my car.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree. I think that like anything you could do, obviously, to relax the body is going to improve HRV, right? So whether that's yoga, meditation, ohms, gratitude, journaling, whatever, is going to help sometimes. And I just, again, personal experience, right? If you told me that 3 years ago, I would have been like, I'm not doing that. Like
that's what everyone says.
No, right? So you have to like, get the thing that they're actually going to do, right? And if they don't really believe, they're not going to lean towards this, more, I don't know, I don't want to call it woo-woo because it's not woo-woo, but like, maybe not so hardcore with, at least if they're working out, they're feeling like, it satisfies that urge. And it also helps improve their HRV, like they're more likely to do it, right? I find. And then just slowly work on some of this other stuff, like journaling and meditation and that type of stuff. And you throw that stuff in there after you get some buy-in from them, showing them the things that you're doing are actually working. Yeah.
So do you do hot, cold therapy at all? Do you do cold baths or sauna?
So, as I said, I live in New Hampshire. So I have a natural cold therapy for like 8 months out of the year, just by walking outside my door. But no, I have a sauna at home, and I'm a huge fan of using the sauna. I try to use it as much as I can. I usually get in there like 2 to 3 times a week. Generally after like I run or get off the rubber or something like that, I'll hop in there and do that. I do cold showers every morning though. That's my cold therapy besides just going outside. But yeah, I like cold showers. Again, some of this kind of edge case stuff where like, I'm not going to convince pretty much anyone to jump in a cold shower. Like it's super hard. You have to be hardcore. You have to be a crazy. Like my wife thinks I'm absolutely insane type of thing, so it's not for everyone, but I think there are some benefits. I know that people will talk about, at least for the cold, like, whatever hormones or whatever, they want to talk about it optimizing, and it may be true, but personally for me, it's a mental thing. I like to do something hard every day. And when it's, below 0 outside, and you wake up in the morning and you got to go get in a freezing shower here in New Hampshire, like it takes some mental fortitude to actually convince yourself to do that. And it's a battle every morning in the winter for me to do it. It's not so bad in the summer, but in the winter, it's like, yeah, I don't really want to be any more cold, but I'm going to do this anyways. Right. And I believe in that, like building up some resiliency, being kind of that harder to kill human, which is also part of the reason why I do obstacle course racing, has some value in today's world. And so I think for me, cold showers, kind of satisfy that urge for me a little bit too.
So last little bit, let's dive into metabolic efficiency and metabolic flexibility and how we can improve that. What are your research you've been doing and writing about and speaking about? What have any tips for people to improve their ability to be fat adapted and metabolically flexible?
So yeah, I think that first is to kind of understand where you are, right? If you're, I think the audience, again, context, I'm trying to follow my own rule here. Like the people that are going to be listening to this podcast, they're going to be in a low carb, mindset, most likely. So if you are a low carb athlete, you have to realize that, part of reducing your carbohydrates means that your body is going to downregulate the pathway to use those carbohydrates. Right? So the enzymes, one of them is called PDH, that is necessary to metabolize carbohydrates and use them efficiently as you exercise, gets downregulated. So people who have been low carb for a long time, they go ahead and they dump a whole bunch of carbohydrates in, before a race or something like that, but their body can't actually efficiently use them, right? So you've kind of gone to this opposite end of the spectrum where before you were unable to use fat and now you went low carb and now you're a great fat burner, but you're unable to use carbohydrates, right, when you need them. So if you're looking to become more metabolically flexible, and the good news is that you didn't lose it completely, right? It just gets down-regulated. The body's really smart. It's great like that. It adapts to different environments. So if you're sending the signal that we're never going to consume carbohydrates, it's not going to waste time and energy producing an enzyme to metabolize carbohydrates that it's never going to see. So once you start consuming some carbohydrates, this comes back, right? And then you eventually become a little bit more efficient to it. So my guidance is, if you've been low carb for a long time and you're thinking about becoming a little bit more metabolically flexible in that you want to consume more carbohydrates, my guidance is basically do it slow, right? If you're at 50 grams, go to 75 grams for a little bit, right? See how you feel. Again, do some, testing, either use a glucose monitor, a CGM, if you can afford something like that, do Rob Wolf's 7-day carb test, find the carbohydrate sources that work for you, and just add 25 grams of your favorite carbohydrate into your meal each day, right? And then do that for a little bit, see how you feel. So observe all those subjective markers that we talked about earlier, and then bump it up a little bit more. And once you get to that sweet spot where your performance is good, your sleep's good, everything feels great, then that's your sweet spot, right? Stay there for a little bit. And whether that's 75 grams, 100 grams, 125 grams, 225 grams, I don't really care what it is, right? But just find the spot that looks good to you. Now, if you happen to be someone else who's, maybe you're a carbohydrate fiend and you're now just kind of getting into this low carb space, you've heard about it, you're curious about it, and you're trying to become more fat adapted. A couple of things that I would suggest is start to do some type of aerobic work in the morning fasted, because this is the time when you're going to be able to burn the most amount of fat, because you haven't ingested anything yet. So, whether that is, it could be as simple to start out with was just going for a walk, go for a walk for a few miles or 20 minutes or whatever in the morning fasted, or you can get on a bike, or you can go for a run, or you can do the rower or whatever it might be, just some type of easy aerobic work. You want to keep it aerobic. You don't want to go too hard because you want to promote, again, that fat burning. So you're trying to upregulate that fat burning if you're more of a carb burner. So you want to keep it nice and easy. Use MAF, breathe nasally, whatever you want to do that. And that's one way to do it. For some people, I hesitate to say this just because, again, context is important. A little bit of fasting, intermittent fasting can help, whether it's daily, whether it's you pick one day to do a longer fast. It's kind of up to the person and what fits into them, but that can certainly help make you, a better fat burner if that's something you struggle with as well. And just, I think consuming whole foods, a lot of, carb burners are the ones that are also consuming processed foods, right? So as soon as you start to consume whole foods, whole natural foods, you start to just by default lower your carbohydrates and upregulate a little bit of more fat burning too, I think. But those are some of the simple things I would suggest to people depending on where they're at.
Yeah, those are great tips. I think, I need to just make a list and add in the show notes or write in a blog of what are carbohydrates, what are fats and proteins that we're talking about. Because I think people think, we were saying earlier at the beginning of the show, not all carbs are bad, and that when you say what are real food carbs, people don't really even know what to eat. And I think they think carbs, I can eat, the bags of chips, or I can have, I don't know, whatever people eat. But the garbage, I think, as I said before, eat real food means to me not processed foods with an ingredient list that you can't understand, like the food rules book I always loved years ago, like what 5 ingredients or less, read the ingredients of the label. And if it is things that you're going to have a little more carbohydrates in them, if they're processed, but they're not it's real food ingredient list is what you have to look for. But I think that gets confusing. What are my options? I don't know what to eat. I can't eat anything. It's like just real food. What people forgot about it.
Yeah, I think the easiest rule is basically like I tell people is like, if it doesn't come in a package, it's real food, right? Like if it's like a vegetable, if it's not in a box or a bag or anything like that, you're pretty safe that this is real food, and that's okay to eat it, right? So if you stick to that, if you really want a simple rule, you can't go wrong with that, honestly.
Sean Croxton is the first one. He was one of the first podcasts out on health and wellness space. People listen to podcasts a long time. Underground Wellness was his podcast he used to have, and he started JERF, Just Eat Real Food, and he made t-shirts and stuff on it, but it just makes sense. JERF, Just Eat Real Food. If you forget, just to burn fat, but it's good.
And obviously if you just Google a little bit, you can go like I guarantee, I don't know off the top of my head, but I guarantee you can find a list of, from Mark Sisson, the Primal Blueprint of Primal approved foods. And if you really want a list of foods, that's very easy to find online. You can get that.
So. Well, they've gone all, I know Brad's gone all carnivore, the organ meats and everything. So everyone is experimenting. I love me some organ meats
as well.
See, I would if I could, because it has all the nutrients that I need. Instead, I go Fridays and get a shot of ingredients into my butt instead. Nutrient injections. So I think it's important to look at, the ancestral health, getting the organ meat. But if you don't eat it, there's the ancestral supplements, Paleo Valley, that's really good. But I just have to I always say, block out the label that I'm eating organ meats, and it's where the nutrients are.
I agree. It's not for everyone, right? I'm not going to tell everyone that they need to go out and eat organ meats. I think a great alternative to do it, like you said, was with the ancestral supplements. I know they have some organ meat pills. There's other brands that do as well that are really good. But one of the best ways I found to do this, and I use it with my kids. So there you go. They're 7 and 4. Although my 4-year-old pretty much eats anything, but my 7-year-old not so much. But if you go to you can find several companies now that you can buy ground beef with the organs mixed in with it, heart, kidney, spleen, and liver, etc. And if you use that and you make hamburgers or meatballs out of them, you'll never know the difference. And if you want to try something that is not so off-putting, at least from a taste point of view, heart is a good place to start, in my opinion. Because it doesn't have bad taste. My wife says it tastes like bad steak, but I think it tastes pretty good. Also, my other second favorite one is tongue. Tongue, if you didn't see it and I cooked it and gave it to you, it looks like pulled pork. Pretty much. You would have no idea if you didn't see it before I cooked it. It also doesn't have a weird taste to it either, like liver or kidney or something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's not for everyone. So there's other ways to get it in for sure. I think something another food that's kind of often overlooked that's like a powerhouse is fish. Salmon, sardines, anchovies, shellfish. I'm lucky I live by the ocean. I have access to this stuff all the time, and I understand that it can be more expensive depending on where you live. But if you can get your hands on some fish and really get in those omega-3s, etc., from fish, I think and shellfish, I think it's another powerhouse food. Oysters have great amounts of zinc and stuff like that in them. So yeah, I think that's overlooked as well.
Okay. Well, I'll try to pull up those lists and put in the show notes, including Rob Wolf's 7-day carb fast and primal food list would be good to throw in there. So good. And where can people find you, Ryan, if they want to read all your blogs and information you have out there and coaching?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to keep track with all the content that I put out is to go to my webpage at rjbhealth.coach. It's not .com, it's .coach. And at the top, there's a newsletter link, and you click that newsletter link and enter your email address and sign up for my newsletter. And I send out links to all my blogs, my Facebook Lives, all kinds of stuff that I put out to my newsletter every week. So it's like 2 to 3 emails, depending on the week. that you'll get from me, but that way you don't have to spend time futzing around on social media to try and find me. But if you want to find me on social media, you can find me at RJB Health Coaching on Instagram. And then if you search RJB Health Coaching or Health Coach on Facebook, you'll find my Facebook page as well. And again, just Google me. Probably it's not too hard to find me. I'll come up.
Good. Yeah, that's good. I used to do a newsletter every week and all this stuff. And the last 3 months, I'm like, oh, I can't do this. It's so much work. I've done it for years, and I just am taking a little hiatus from it because it's so much work to do newsletter and write blogs, and it was easier when I had more time. But
it's a habit for sure, right?
Yeah.
So I've developed a habit of writing blogs, and just I set aside time. This is the time that I do that stuff. And once I set aside the time and made the habit out of it, just like anything else, meditation, etc.
You got to put it in the schedule and just do it every week. So it's a habit.
You do it. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Sure.
Well, good job. I know you have great content out that everyone appreciates to read. So guys, head out there, and I'll put all the links in the notes. And we look forward to chatting with you online in the future. Ryan, thanks for everything you're doing to inspire others to take care of their health.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Debbie.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.